The High Speaker's voice echoed across the Galactic Senate chamber, each syllable dripping with disdain. The Ithorians are a blight, a drain on galactic resources. Their frail forms and primitive technology render them unfit. His words, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, seemed to physically press down on David Harris, a mid-level diplomat representing the Earth Alliance. David shifted in his seat, a knot forming in his stomach. He glanced around the Senate, a vast amphitheater of floating platforms and alien delegates, their faces impassive, their eyes reflecting the High Speaker's pronouncements like polished obsidian. A montage flickered across the holographic displays that ringed the chamber, ostensibly showing the Ithorians' alleged failings. But what David saw was different. Lush, emerald jungles teeming with life. Ithorians, their twin mouths chanting ancient melodies as they tended to their floating cities, powered by intricate systems of interwoven vines and solar collectors. Children, their skin the color of jade, laughing as they chased bioluminescent butterflies through fields of towering, phosphorescent fungi. Artisans weaving tapestries that depicted the history of their people, a history rich in environmental stewardship and a deep, abiding respect for the balance of nature. It was a culture vibrant with life, not the pathetic existence the High Speaker described. The vote was swift, brutal. A sea of blue lights signifying agreement illuminated the chamber. Only a handful of dissenting yellows flickered in response. The Galactic Council, in its infinite, self-proclaimed wisdom, had voted to cut off all aid and support to the Ithorian species, effectively signing their death warrant. David felt a surge of anger. He raised his hand, activating his calm. "Honorable Speaker," he began, his voice tight with suppressed emotion, "with all due respect, I must register my dissent. The Ithorians, your dissent is noted, Councillor Harris." The High Speaker interrupted, his voice amplified to a deafening roar. "But the matter is closed." Later, in the sterile confines of the Earth Alliance embassy, David confronted Ambassador Cole, his superior. "How can we stand by and let this happen? They're condemning an entire species." Cole, a seasoned diplomat with eyes that held the cold calculation of a quantum computer, sighed. "David, idealism is a luxury we can't afford. There are complex political considerations at play, alliances to maintain, resources to secure." He paused, his gaze hardening. "The Council has made its decision. We will abide by it." Driven by a growing unease, David retreated to his quarters and accessed the Galactic archives, bypassing official channels. He searched for information on the Ithorians, sifting through layers of sanitized reports and carefully crafted narratives. What he found beneath the surface sent a chill down his spine. The Ithorian homeworld, Ither, was not a barren wasteland. It was a treasure trove of rare minerals, vital for advanced technologies. And the Ithorians themselves, far from being primitive, possessed a deep understanding of sustainable energy and environmental control, knowledge the Council clearly coveted. Meanwhile, on Ither, Lita, a respected scientist and community leader, stood on the precipice of a vast chasm, the air thick with the acrid stench of industrial runoff. She oversaw a team of researchers desperately trying to stabilize the planet's deteriorating ecosystem, their faces etched with worry. The news from the Galactic Senate reached them moments later. Lita watched the holographic broadcast, her twin mouths tightening in a grim line, her eyes reflecting the dying light of her world. Then, a new message flashed across the screen. Earth Alliance offers protection and humanitarian aid to the Ithorian people. The announcement rippled through the galaxy, a shockwave of disbelief and cautious hope. The Galactic Council responded swiftly, issuing a formal condemnation of Earth's actions, warning of dire consequences for defying its authority. Back in his quarters, David stared at the Council's statement, his suspicion hardening into conviction. This wasn't about galactic well-being. It was about control, about resources, about power. On Ither, Lita watched the Earthships descend through the smog-choked atmosphere, their hulls emblazoned with the blue and green symbol of Earth. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over her: relief, yes, but also a deep-seated fear. She had heard stories of other species, lured in by promises of aid, only to be exploited and subjugated. What do they want? She murmured, her voice barely audible above the whine of the descending ships. What will they take from us in return? What the rest of the galaxy didn't know was that the Ithorians possessed technology that could reverse their dying planet. They hid this technology so that they would not be bothered by the Galactic Council, but with Earth's help, they may not have to hide any longer. News spread throughout the galaxy about Earth's betrayal, and some began to wonder if Earth is also unfit to survive. The Earth fleet, a swarm of silver against the inky black, pierced the veil of hyperspace. Dozens of ships, ranging from bulky freighters laden with supplies to sleek cruisers dripping with defensive weaponry, materialized near the Ithorian system. On the bridge of the flagship Hope, David Harris stared out at the swirling nebula that painted the void. He adjusted his tie, the knot feeling tighter than usual. Entering Ithorian space, a voice announced from the comm panel. All ships, prepare for standard scans. David straightened, his gaze fixed on the swirling colors ahead. He'd pored over reports, attended countless briefings, but nothing could have prepared him for the sheer scale of the humanitarian crisis unfolding here. He wanted to believe he could make a difference. Almost immediately, the Hope shuddered. Minor malfunction in engine core 3, the same voice reported. Rerouting power, ETA to Ithorian orbit delayed by 15 minutes. David frowned. 15 minutes could be an eternity. It was the first of many delays. As the fleet limped towards its destination, similar reports trickled in from other vessels. Damaged sensors, faulty life support systems, communication glitches. Each felt like a pinprick to David's optimism. On the surface of Ither, Lita watched the approaching fleet through a high-powered telescope. The air filtration mask chafed against her snout, a constant reminder of her dying world. Hope flickered within her, but it was a fragile flame, easily extinguished by the harsh realities of the past. Her people had been promised salvation before, only to be betrayed. She tightened her grip on the telescope, her multiple hearts pounding a slow, steady rhythm of distrust. The first Earth ships finally reached orbit, and the laborious process of unloading began. Convoys of automated drones ferried containers towards designated landing zones, but the distribution process quickly bogged down. Cultural misunderstandings flared between Earth relief workers and Ithorian administrators. Simple requests became tangled in bureaucratic red tape. They want what form filled out in triplicate, David exploded, pacing his temporary office. People are starving and they're worried about paperwork. His aide, a young woman named Sarah, sighed. It's not that simple, David. The Ithorians have their own protocols, their own way of doing things. We can't just bulldoze over them. David ran a hand through his hair. I know. But we're losing precious time. And then there's the odd equipment failures. Later, hunched over a console, David reviewed diagnostic reports. He noticed a disturbing pattern. Key components across multiple ships had been subtly sabotaged. The damage was too precise, too consistent to be accidental. He accessed a secure comm channel, his face grim. This is Harris to Earth Central. I believe the Council is deliberately interfering with our efforts. I'm seeing evidence of sabotage, and I've intercepted encrypted communications suggesting they're spreading disinformation among the Ithorian population. On the streets of a nearby Ithorian city, a crowd gathered, chanting slogans of protest. Banners depicting Earth ships as vultures were held high. The Council's propaganda had taken root, painting Earth as an exploiter, a colonizer in disguise. They come promising aid, a voice boomed from a makeshift stage, but they only want to steal our resources to destroy our culture. David, frustrated and exhausted, requested a meeting with Lita. He found her in a research lab, surrounded by flickering holographic displays. The air hummed with the low thrum of complex machinery. "Dr. Lita," David began, his voice carefully neutral, "I need to understand why there's so much resistance to our help. We're here to save your people." Lita turned, her multifaceted eyes studying him with an unsettling intensity. "Save us, or save yourselves. The Council deemed us unfit. Now you arrive. What do you really want, human?" David sighed, pulling up a holographic projection of Ither's geological survey. Your planet's core is unstable. The atmosphere is collapsing because the Council destroyed the environmental regulators. We have the data." Lita stared at the projection, her expression unreadable. Then, she turned and led him deeper into the lab, past rows of humming machinery and into a hidden chamber. There, bathed in the ethereal glow of energy conduits, lay a device of breathtaking complexity. It looked ancient, yet vibrated with barely held-back power. "This," Lita said, her voice barely a whisper, "is what we were working on before the Council attacked. A sustainable energy source, a way to heal our world, but we lacked the resources to power it up." The cost to Earth's economy was beginning to show. News feeds flashed across screens in the background, reporting plummeting stock prices and angry protests back on Earth. The Council, using its considerable economic leverage, had begun to strangle Earth's trade routes, imposing crippling sanctions. Later that evening, exhausted and frustrated, David sat with Lita, sharing a simple meal of synthesized protein. "I don't understand it," he said, shaking his head. "Why is the Council doing this? Why are they so determined to see you fail?" Lita looked at him, her eyes filled with a sadness that went beyond the plight of her planet. "They want something from us. Something we have that they cannot take by force." David frowned, pulling up a geological scan of Ither. "I've noticed that the Council has been suppressing information about the planet's rich mineral deposits. The information could help with your energy. Why would they do that?" Lita flinched. "My family. They were scientists. They discovered those deposits. They refused to let the Council exploit them. The Council bombed their research facility. They all died." Her voice was a bare whisper, thick with pain. As she spoke, alarms blared. A red light flooded the lab. "Incoming vessels." A voice announced over the comm system, unidentified but bearing Council markings. David and Lita raced to the viewport. In the distance, a line of sleek black warships materialized near the edge of the Ithorian system. They were headed straight for the Earth Aid convoy. "They're violating the non-aggression treaty," David exclaimed, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. Before he could react, the Council ships opened fire. Energy bolts ripped through space, striking several Earth vessels. Explosions blossomed, turning the silver ships into burning wreckage. The relief effort had become a battlefield. The high speaker's decree echoed across the galactic networks. By order of the Council, a humanitarian blockade is now in effect around the Ithorian system. All non-Council vessels are prohibited from entering, effective immediately. This measure is to ensure the safety and well-being of the Ithorian people during their time of crisis. On Earth, Ambassador Sharma slammed her fist on the table, the sound echoing in the near-empty conference room. "A humanitarian blockade. It's a prison. They're starving them." Her words were broadcast live, a futile gesture against the Council's iron grip. The screen showed the Ithorian system, now a web of red lines representing the Council's warships. The blockade's effect was immediate and brutal. The bustling markets of Ither Prime, once overflowing with exotic fruits and handcrafted goods, were now barren. Empty stalls stood like hollow eye sockets, staring out at the increasingly gaunt faces of the Ithorian people. The hospitals, already stretched thin by the environmental toxins, overflowed with the sick and the starving. Med stations, usually abuzz with the low hum of automated diagnostics, fell silent as power reserves dwindled. In the sprawling hydroponics district, a riot erupted. Desperate citizens, their faces smeared with dirt and desperation, clashed over dwindling rations. The air filled with the sharp crackle of stunned batons and the guttural cries of the starving. A young Ithorian mother, her child clutched tightly in her arms, was knocked to the ground, her pleas for food lost in the chaos. On the bridge of the Dauntless, orbiting a safe distance from the blockade, David watched the unfolding tragedy on the comm screen, his expression resolute. "We can't just sit here and watch them die," he argued, his voice tight with frustration. "Our orders are clear, Lieutenant Harris," Commander Vargas replied, his face grim. "We cannot risk open war with the Council." "Then let me take a team down," David countered, leaning forward. "A small, covert operation. We can deliver aid, assess the situation on the ground." Vargas sighed, rubbing his temples. "Denied, Lieutenant, stand down." But David wasn't listening. Later that night, under the cloak of a lunar shadow, a small transport ship, the Whisperwind, detached from the Dauntless. Inside, David and a hand-picked team of specialists prepared for the impossible. On Ither, inside the dimly lit council chambers of the Elder Conclave, Lita addressed her people, her voice weary but resolute. "We are facing a crisis unlike any other in our history. Resources are dwindling. The Council's blockade has choked off our supply lines. I have made the difficult decision to ration our remaining energy reserves, prioritizing essential services. The hospitals, the atmospheric scrubbers, the water purification plants." A wave of murmurs rippled through the chamber, filled with anger and fear. "I know this will cause hardship, but it is the only way to ensure our survival." Meanwhile, the Whisperwind, its cloaking device flickering intermittently, navigated the treacherous web of Council patrols. Alarms blared as the ship brushed against a sensor net, the klaxons echoing through the cramped corridors. "Hold steady," David barked, his squeezing hard as he gripped the arms of his chair. "Just a little further." On the surface, after a harrowing landing in the ruins of a once vibrant city, David and his team witnessed the full horror of the riots. Bodies lay scattered in the streets, their faces contorted in silent screams. Buildings were ablaze, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock their plight. The stench of smoke and decay hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of the planet's slow demise. David's persistence hardened. He had to help. Under the cover of darkness, David met with Lita in a hidden underground bunker, the air thick with the smell of ozone and desperation. He shared the intelligence he had gathered about the Council's blockade strategy, revealing their patrol routes and sensor blind spots. "We're here to help, Lita," he said, his voice sincere. "Earth will not abandon you." Lita looked at him, her multifaceted eyes filled with a mixture of hope and suspicion. "There is one possibility," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "Deep beneath the surface, there lies a network of geothermal vents, untapped energy that could power a planetary shield, protecting us from the worst of the atmospheric storms. But accessing it requires resources we no longer possess, resources only Earth can provide." Back on Earth, in the sterile halls of the Global Council, a heated debate raged. "The economic sanctions are crippling us," Councillor Ito exclaimed, slamming a datapad on the table. "We cannot continue to pour resources into a lost cause." "The Ithorians are not a lost cause," Ambassador Sharma retorted, her voice sharp. "They are a sentient species deserving of our help." As the debate spiraled into chaos, a desperate message crackled across the comm system. It was David. "The situation here is critical. Ithorian society is on the verge of collapse. We need those resources for the planetary shield, and we need them now. If we don't act, all will be lost." Against the backdrop of economic pressure and internal division, Earth's government authorized a covert operation. A transport ship, the Hope, loaded with the necessary resources, prepared to embark on a perilous journey through a newly discovered hyperspace route, hoping to bypass the Council's blockade. But the Council was waiting. As the Hope emerged from hyperspace, a patrol fleet materialized, their weapons charged and ready. A fierce battle erupted, the void of space illuminated by the blinding flashes of energy weapons. The Hope, outgunned and outmanned, fought valiantly, but it was a losing battle. In a final, desperate act of defiance, the captain of the Hope triggered the ship's self-destruct, denying the Council the resources they craved. News of the failed supply run reached the Ithorian homeworld like a death knell. The flickering lights of the city dimmed further, casting long, despairing shadows. The hope that had flickered so briefly was extinguished, replaced by a crushing sense of inevitability. The end was near. The stench of decay clung to the air of Ither like a shroud. Rotting vegetation and unburied corpses lined the streets, a grim testament to the Council's blockade. Within the makeshift medical tents, the air thrummed with the low hum of overworked bioscanners and the rasping coughs of the infected. Ithorians, weakened by famine, succumbed to diseases that once posed little threat. David stared at the holographic display, his face grim. "The situation is critical, Lita. We're losing them faster than we can treat them." He paused, then his fingers danced across the console, pulling up a restricted file. "There's something else you need to see." The screen flickered, displaying geological surveys, mining schematics, and encrypted communications. "This data, it's irrefutable," David said, his voice tight with anger. The Council didn't just abandon Ither. They orchestrated the environmental disaster to seize the planet's mineral wealth. Lita stared at the evidence, her four mouths working soundlessly. The implications crashed over her like a tidal wave. Betrayal, exploitation, death, all meticulously planned. They did this to us." Before David could answer, a news alert flashed across the screen. Council supply ships attacked radical Ithorian group claims responsibility. The report showed grainy footage of a hijacked transport exploding in a ball of fire. "Some of our people have lost faith in diplomacy," Lita said, her voice heavy with sorrow. "They believe violence is the only answer." "Violence won't solve anything," David countered. "It will only give the Council more reason to crush you." Days turned into weeks, and the situation on Ither continued to deteriorate. Desperate for a solution, David and Lita ventured into the contaminated zone, a desolate landscape ravaged by radiation and toxic chemicals. The air crackled with static, and the ground pulsed with an unnatural heat. Twisted, mutated creatures lurked in the shadows, their eyes glowing with malevolent hunger. "The planetary shield generator needs a specific resonator, and it's in that facility," David said, pointing to a crumbling structure in the distance. "But the radiation levels are off the charts." Their protective suits offered limited protection, and each step was a gamble. They fought off mutated creatures with pulse rifles, their movements hampered by the bulky suits. The air tasted like metal and ash, and the constant hum of the radiation monitors was a maddening drone. As they worked to extract the resonator, Lita paused, her gaze distant. "My family. They died in a Council-backed mining operation years ago. They were excavating a rare mineral deposit when the mine collapsed." Her voice cracked with suppressed emotion. "The Council didn't care. They just sealed the entrance and left them to die." David reached out and gently touched her arm. "I'm so sorry, Lita. I understand now. This isn't just about saving a planet, it's about justice." In a seemingly impossible way, the Earth scientists managed to create the energy shield that would save the people of Ither. The shield generator, a towering structure of metal and energy conduits, hummed with power. A wave of hope washed over the Ithorians as the activation sequence began. But as the shield powered up, a figure emerged from the shadows, a Council assassin cloaked in stealth technology. The assassin raised a disruptor pistol, targeting Lita. Reacting instinctively, David shoved Lita aside, taking the blast himself. The disruptor bolt seared through his armor, sending him crashing to the ground. "David!" Lita cried, turning to face the assassin. Drawing on his training, David scrambled to his feet, ignoring the searing pain. He activated his wrist-mounted energy blade, a gift from Earth's technological arsenal. With a roar, he lunged at the assassin, engaging in a deadly dance of blades and energy blasts. David, fueled by adrenaline and a fierce purpose to protect Lita, disarmed the assassin and knocked them unconscious. While the shield was being made, Earth, with the aid of newly formed alliances with other species, worked tirelessly to secretly deliver massive supplies, showcasing their logistical capabilities. Convoys of freighters, escorted by warships from various species, slipped through the Council blockade under the cover of darkness, delivering food, medicine, and equipment to the starving Ithorians. Finally, the planetary shield was activated, a shimmering dome of energy enveloping the Ithorian homeworld, protecting it from further environmental damage. Cheers erupted from the Ithorian cities, a symphony of hope and relief. But their celebration was short-lived. Despite the shield's activation, the planet's ecosystem continued to degrade. The forests withered, the rivers dried up, and the air grew thinner. David stared at the data, his face etched with concern. The damage is more severe than we anticipated, Lita. The shield only buys us time. It's not a permanent solution. Lita began to fall into depression as she watched her home die, feeling responsible for the failure of the shield. She withdrew from David, spending her days in the ruined temples, praying to ancient gods for a miracle that would never come. Earth's allies began to lose faith in the Ithorian rescue mission, fearing that Earth was expending too many resources on a lost cause. Pressure mounted on Earth's leaders to abandon the Ithorians and cut their losses. Facing immense pressure from Earth and the growing despair of the Ithorians, David realized they were running out of options and time. He found Lita sitting alone in a ruined temple, her face buried in her hands. "Lita," he said gently, kneeling beside her. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "There's nothing left to do, David. We have to leave. Ither is dying and there's nothing we can do to save it." David took her hand, his grip firm. "No, Lita, that's not true. We can save this planet together." The ground bucked. A screech like metal tearing ripped through the air, followed by a chorus of alarms that echoed across the once serene Ithorian plains. The planetary shield, a shimmering veil of energy that had protected the planet for centuries, flickered violently, then fractured. A chunk of ionized atmosphere slammed into the plains, vaporizing a swathe of the emerald forests and leaving behind a smoking crater. Panic seized the Ithorian settlements. David found Lita in her laboratory, hunched over a console, her 4 eyes glazed with despair. The vibrant green of her skin seemed muted, her usual energy replaced by a chilling stillness. "Lita?" David's voice was soft, hesitant. She didn't turn. "It's failing, David, all of it, the shield, the planet, my people." Her voice was a hollow whisper. I can't lead them through this." David knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on her arm. "That's not true. You're the strongest person I know. You've faced worse before." Lita finally turned, her eyes filled with a pain that cut David to the core. "Have I, or have I just been lucky? Maybe the council was right. Maybe we are unfit. Maybe it's better to just accept it." She pulled away, retreating further into herself. A chime sounded from David's comm. He hesitated, then answered. The hollow image of Commander Harris flickered into existence. "Harris here. Harris, report. What's the status of the Ithorian shield?" "Commander, the shield is failing. We're experiencing widespread environmental collapse." Harris's face hardened. "Understood. I'm also receiving word from several of our allies. They're officially withdrawing their support for the Ithorian rescue mission. Citing unsustainable resource depletion. I'm sorry, Harris, command out." The hollow flickered off, leaving David in stunned silence. He turned back to Lita, but she hadn't moved, her gaze fixed on the failing shield projections. He knew he couldn't tell her this now. An idea, cold and desperate, formed in his mind. He had to act. "Lita, I need to go. There's something I need to check." "Where?" she asked, her voice devoid of emotion. The council, I think they're behind this. Lita didn't respond. David knew he had to do this alone. He moved quickly, accessing classified data logs, his fingers flying across the console. He found a schematic of a cloaked device, its energy signature matching the fluctuations in the shield's decay. The council was amplifying the planet's environmental damage. He had to stop them. He prepped his ship, a small, agile fighter, arming it with a disruptor cannon. He knew this was likely a suicide mission, but he couldn't stand by and watch the Ithorians die. He found Lita near the launch bay, staring out at the turbulent sky. He walked up to her. Lita, I'm going to disable that device. It's the only way. She didn't turn. It's no use, David, just let it end. He took her hand, forcing her to look at him. No, I'm not going to let it end, and neither are you. You're stronger than you think. You have to believe in your people, Lita. I believe in you. He kissed her forehead, then turned and ran towards his ship. Lita watched as David's ship streaked towards the upper atmosphere, a tiny spark of defiance against the dying world. His courage, his unwavering belief, sparked something within her, a flicker of the hope she thought she'd lost. She remembered the stories of her ancestors, their resilience in the face of countless challenges. She couldn't let their legacy die. She turned and ran back to the lab, her dedication renewed. She activated the comm system, broadcasting a message to all Ithorian scientists. This is Lita. I need you all in the main laboratory. Now, we're not done yet. We will not surrender. The remaining scientists, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair, slowly began to gather. Lita addressed them, her voice regaining its former strength. We've faced setbacks before. We've overcome impossible odds. We will do it again. I know there's a way to save this planet. We just need to find it. She pulled up the data from the planetary shield, analyzing the energy fluctuations, searching for any clue, any pattern. Hours passed. The scientists worked tirelessly, fueled by Lita's renewed hope. Finally, one of them cried out, Lita, I think I've found something. There's a hidden pattern in the energy readings. It's faint, but it's there. It seems to be connected to the planet's core. Lita rushed to the console, examining the data. The scientist was right. There was a hidden pattern, a rhythmic pulse that resonated deep within the planet. It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. Meanwhile, in the upper atmosphere, David's ship approached the cloaked device. It was heavily guarded by council fighters, but David was determined. He engaged the disruptor cannon, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts. The council fighters swarmed around him, their lasers tearing through his shields. He dodged and weaved, his piloting skills pushed to the limit. Finally, he managed to break through the defenses and target the cloaked device. He fired a concentrated blast, overloading the device's core. The cloaked device exploded in a flash of energy, momentarily stabilizing the planet's decay. But David's ship was critically damaged. His engine sputtered, then died. He was stranded in space, his life support systems failing. Lita, this is David. The device is disabled, but my ship is down. I'm stranded. His voice was weak, fading in and out. David, hold on. We're working on something. We think we've found a way to save the planet. Lita's voice crackled through the comm. What? What is it? We've discovered a hidden pattern in the shield's energy fluctuations. We think we can stabilize the environment by tapping into the planet's core energy. David coughed, his vision blurring. The core, that's risky. It could trigger a cataclysmic eruption. I know, but it's our only chance. What do we do? David closed his eyes, his mind racing. He knew the risks, but he also knew the Ithorians' resilience, their ability to adapt and overcome. And he trusted Lita. Do it, Lita. The potential reward outweighs the risk of failure. I believe in you. Lita took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She looked at the faces of her fellow scientists, their eyes filled with hope and willpower. Then let's do it. Let's save our home. Back on Earth, engineers received Lita's design for the core tap. They immediately began working to modify it. adding safety protocols and energy regulation systems. They knew this was a long shot, but they couldn't abandon the Ithorians now. The engineers created a system that would stabilize the planet while extracting a large amount of energy for long-term use. Leda and David oversaw the core tap operation from the ground. Tremors shook the planet and environmental anomalies surged around them. The sky crackled with energy. "Activating core tap," Leda announced, her voice trembling. The system whirred to life, drawing energy from the planet's core. A beam of light shot into the sky, stabilizing the atmosphere. The tremors subsided and the environmental anomalies began to dissipate. The core tap was working, but then a surge of energy threatened to overload the system. Alarms blared and the consoles flashed red. "We're losing control," one of the scientists shouted. "The energy is too much. It's going to overload the system." Leda stared at the monitors, her face etched with panic. They had come so far, but it was all about to be destroyed. David, drifting in space, watched as the beam of energy pulsed, growing brighter and more unstable. He knew that if the system overloaded, it could destroy the planet. He closed his eyes, preparing for the end. The ground trembled beneath David's feet, not the gentle tremor of a living planet, but the violent shudder of a dying one. The energy surge from the core tap spiked again, throwing sparks from the hastily repaired control panels. Alarms blared, a cacophony of desperate warnings. "David, we're reaching critical levels." Leda's voice crackled through the comms, strained with urgency. "The containment field is failing." David wrestled with the recalibration controls, sweat stinging his eyes. He muttered a string of technical commands, fingers flying across the console. "Almost there. Just need to reroute the flow to the secondary containment system." "I feel the surge, David," Leda said, her voice taking on a strange, ethereal quality. "It is. Angry, shifting. I can guide you, but you must be precise." Her connection to the planet, usually a source of comfort and wisdom, was now a vital instrument in averting disaster. "Adjust the flow modulator. 0.7 degrees to the right. Now." David obeyed instantly, his movements fluid and practiced. He trusted Leda implicitly, knew that her connection to the planet was more than just a metaphor. It was a living, breathing link. The energy reading stabilized for a heartbeat, then spiked again. "Again, David, 0.3 degrees. Left, now." This dance continued, a terrifying ballet of technological precision and alien intuition. David, the human engineer, and Leda, the Ithorian empath, working as one to tame the planet's fury. Finally, with a groan of tortured metal, the excess energy yielded. A beam of pure, contained energy shot from the core tap, arcing towards the newly constructed secondary containment field. The alarms died down, replaced by a low, steady hum. Leda sighed, a wave of relief washing over her. "It is done, David. The core is stable." Exhaustion washed over David, but beneath it a profound sense of accomplishment. They had done it, together. The planet was safe for now, and not only safe but empowered. The contained energy flowed smoothly, providing a clean, sustainable energy source for the Ithorians. But the fight wasn't over. Moments later, a galaxy-wide broadcast cut through the celebrations. It was a compilation of intercepted communications, financial records, and hidden camera footage, all meticulously compiled and verified. The evidence of the Galactic Council's sabotage was undeniable, a tapestry of greed, corruption, and blatant disregard for life. The feed displayed images of cloaked ships attacking Earth vessels. Then, financial records showing bribes and payoffs. Finally, a recording of the High Speaker ordering the initial act of sabotage. Outrage exploded across the galaxy. Species who had long suffered under the Council's rule finally found their voice. Calls for justice echoed from every corner of known space. Days later, David stood before a newly formed emergency Galactic Senate, his voice ringing with conviction. "The evidence is clear. The Council has betrayed its mandate. They have abused their power, exploited the weak, and endangered entire species for their own gain. He gestured to the holographic displays, showcasing the Council's crimes in stark detail. We cannot allow this to stand. We must hold them accountable for their actions. The Senate chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, a mixture of anger, disbelief, and persistence. One by one, senators rose to denounce the Council's actions, pledging their support for justice and reform. Within hours, several council members were arrested, their faces etched with shock and disbelief. Others, sensing the tide turning against them, fled into exile, seeking refuge in the dark corners of the galaxy. On the surface of the Ithorian planet, a new era was dawning. The Ithorians, their spirits unbroken, began the long process of rebuilding their civilization. The energy flowed, powering the environmental restoration systems. New sprouts emerged from the scorched earth. The forests began to regrow, vibrant green shoots pushing through the ash. The Ithorian culture, nearly extinguished, was rekindled, stronger and more resilient than before. Leda was re-elected as the leader of her people, her face etched with perseverance and hope. She addressed the gathered crowds, her voice resonating with strength and wisdom. We have faced darkness, but we have emerged stronger. We have learned the value of resilience, the power of unity, and the importance of never giving up hope. Together, we will build a new future, a future of prosperity, sustainability, and peace. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the restored landscape in hues of orange and gold, David and Leda stood side by side, overlooking the burgeoning forests. "We did it," David said softly, his voice filled with awe. "We actually did it." Leda smiled, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears. "We did it together, David. Your strength, your compassion, it saved us. And your wisdom, your connection to this planet. It saved me," David replied, his gaze meeting hers. "I came here a skeptic, disillusioned with the galaxy, but you showed me what's possible when people work together, when they fight for what's right." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the bond between them palpable. Then David spoke again, his voice filled with willpower. "This is just the beginning, Leda. We have a responsibility to ensure that what happened here never happens again. No species should ever be deemed unfit by those in power." "Agreed," Leda nodded, her eyes hardening with commitment. "We will work together, David. We will promote justice and cooperation throughout the galaxy. We will be a voice for the voiceless, a shield for the vulnerable." Even as they spoke, Earth and Ithorian engineers were working tirelessly, constructing energy distribution networks across the planet, ensuring that every community had access to clean, sustainable power. The technology that had almost destroyed the planet was now its salvation. Ships from other species began to arrive, drawn by the promise of knowledge and collaboration. They came to learn from the Ithorians' environmental expertise and Earth's technological ingenuity. The planet became a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when different cultures worked together for a common goal. David turned to Leda, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "We should expand Earth's rescue program. There are other species out there who need our help, who are suffering under oppressive regimes." "Yes," Leda agreed, her face lighting up with enthusiasm. "We can use our combined knowledge and resources to make a real difference in the galaxy." Hand in hand, they walked towards a waiting transport, ready to embark on their next adventure. As their ship soared into the sky, leaving the restored planet behind, they looked out at the star-studded expanse, their hearts filled with hope and perseverance. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges,